FI, Qarib is supporting more than 40 media outlets in Palestine, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Qarib talks tackles regional issues from a journalist and media perspective, but this time it will be a comprehensive talk about a legal aspect in addition to the role of media. And our theme is about Syria's transitional justice that we heard a lot about its importance. The atrocities that we heard a lot about it during the past regime, like using the chemical weapons, the explosive barrels, and the explosions. And we have seen it with the fall of the regime and the escape of Assad and the scenes of prisons and destruction and the colossal number of the victims and intentional murder opens the door for accountability, reconciliation, and reparation, and most importantly, the assurance in order not to repeat such actions. After several weeks of the fall of Bashar al-Assad, time is moving slow, as if the number of victims is still unofficial, maybe because they are still looking for the forced missing people and what has been declared by the UN was shocking, and according to the UN, which indicated that 1.5% of the Syrian people died because of the crimes of the regime. We followed up such atrocities, and we followed up the documents at the evening when we entered the prisons. And as you said during the preparation for this discussion, there were this evidence was disappearing and inside the prisons, and the documents are necessary in order to implement transitional justice, because we are going to talk about evidences in order, in addition to maintain the memory for the coming generations, because transitional justice doesn't mean to delete the memory, but rather not to repeat what happened. Our guests in this talk today and the speakers that are joining us through the room are Fadwa Mahmoud. She's a previous detainee. Her husband and son are still missing. She's not an activist only. She's a previous fighter, freedom fighter, and current freedom fighter in order to discover the destiny of missings, and also and also and Jumana Saif, a legal advisor in the European Center for Constitutional Human Rights, and in order to discover all the violations of human rights. And she's a daughter of a previous detainee in Damascus, Zaina Shahala, a Damascus-based journalist that did not actually, she was also detained, and we'll be talking to her about her first impressions and other related issues. Rand Sabbagh, the executive director for the Syrian Female Journalist Network. She is residing in Germany currently, and she has an experience with the interrogation and how they interrogated the and how she interviews the survivors, and how it is important to our discussion. And Mr. Mu'tasim Siyufi, the executive director of the Day After, that is paying attention to the violations, not only to support the survivors, female and male survivors, but also following up the housing and property authorities, which is correlated with the Syria transitional justice, as we will see. In order to dwell into this issue, we may say that we are facing many challenges in order to entrench justice and where we can start. I talked to each one of you, and in summary, there is a set of challenges that you mentioned. I would like you to mention in order to discuss it thoroughly without forgetting the role of media in enhancing this track. As for evidence collection, as we mentioned, there is done randomly, and I will start with Zaina, who woke up one day with the news of the fall of the Bashar al-Assad, and she was one of those who entered the prison and witnessed the tampering of the documents. Some people went to the prisons in order to search for their children or husbands or parents, and but. You mentioned that tampering with documents was intentional. And Zaina, I would like to welcome you. What are your first observations when it relates to the security centers and detention centers and prisons? Actually, we haven't slept that night, or we haven't slept for 2 to 3 nights before the fall of the regime. I have seen certain observations during the first day of the fall that could be that no one can understand, and without realizing the scale of the event. At the same time, there wasn't any possibility to control things, and everybody was surprised, and people went there to search for their beloved ones, and and the security centers, actually, next to my house, we have 2 to 3 centers, so it was easy for me to enter any security center. But what was not understandable, that to continue with this chaos after 2 to 3 weeks till now, and some of the centers are still open till now. Yes, yes, it was supposed that now. We need a security clearance in order to or permit to enter these centers, and even when there is no clauses that contain all the documents or the data in order to know, to enable people to know what happened to their loved ones. Didn't people take some of the documents? Because as we understand from you, Matsam and Rand, that some people called, and they said that received calls telling them that the files of your missing ones is with us. That's true, because there's a privacy. Till now, there is nothing clear or central. And some people went into the different centers and took documents. Till now, there is nothing at the national level, or we are following up with organizations that we have been working with them for years. And we have seen many IDs left, and people are stepping on them and stepping on documents. Some people were burning the documents in order to have some warmth during the night. And but the authorities should have closed all these centers in order to maintain the losing of such documents, or burning them. And even after 2 weeks, we are still seeing documents being burnt, and we are wondering who can access such documents or hard disks from the different security centers. I don't know with what aim. Maybe they were looking for something, but as you said, it is a privacy issue. And if my file is roaming and moving around the people, yes, has anyone found your file? It happened, actually. Someone found my CD. My CD till now I didn't play it or open it, and my name was written on the CD. I think this is a violation of privacy, and sometimes there are something private because they were documented, and till now there is no clear mechanism to handle this issue. Jumano, I will talk to you because we don't want to provide a pessimistic view because there was tampering of some of the evidence in prison. But this doesn't mean that we cannot get other evidences in order to achieve the transitional justice. Of course, I would like to remind you that destruction of such evidence that are useful for justice is criminalized by the international law with a 5 year imprisonment as a penalty in addition to other financial fines and other penalties. But unfortunately, the destruction or the lost documents. I was one of the people who received some messages or calls telling me that we have some evidences or CDs and what we can do with them. I think. Are they related to you? No, no, they are not related to me, but because I'm an advocate working on this file, they were counseling me or consulting me what we can do with them. I didn't know how to respond because there was ambiguity and where they should be delivered or they are. Sometimes we needed to shed light on your task because you were behind some of the court cases abroad and you worked on collecting evidence. Before I've been working with the European Center for Constitutional Human Rights for 8 years now, and we don't work ourselves on documentation, but we do it in partnership with different Syrian and international organizations, and we use them in supporting our cases, and we are raising these cases on behalf of the victims of the survivors who survived such grave violations. And we also send the files to the German Prosecutor General and about torture and detention in different security centers. We need to talk about this thoroughly, what we can do with the evidence we need to start with the transitional justice. So we need to ask Fadwa, when we talked together in preparation for this session, you were part of the search for truth and facts in order to achieve transitional justice. First of all, you are welcome. I was. I'm still angry and feeling upset because for me, I paid a lot from my life, and I lived till the moment for the moment uh, of the fall of the Assad family. I couldn't be joyful because there was something missing, and what increased my anger that because I am dealing with the most important file, the missing people, maybe hundreds of thousands are hidden or missing, and you can imagine when with the blank number with the number of the members of their families, and I think it is unbelievable, and in spite of knowing the importance of these files and evidences, the people know the importance, and in spite of this, you saw how they dealt with it. You also asked us that you asked for an appointment from Ashara, but you didn't get an appointment as families of missing people. Up till now, and since the first week, we have been trying. And talk about the issue of protecting files and other issues that we need to keep and maintain, but no one listened to us, and also asking for appointment in order to meet someone from the HTS, but no one actually is giving us an appointment. I respect the right of any family or mother looking for her missing loved ones, and when the mother of Stephen comes from the USA. The government will meet her during 2 hours. Till now, we have been asking for an appointment for 2 months, and no one is meeting us. And the families of the missing people are living day to day in order to know the destiny of the missing people, and no one met with any lady from these families, the families of the missing people, and I don't know what to call this or to name this. Mu'tasim, when we talked together, had some doubts about the new Syrian administration because there are perpetrators. Are they enthusiastic or motivated to apply and implement transitional justice? And you mentioned also very important ideas that I will come back to in a while. Thank you very much. I am happy to be with you, but sad to talk about this issue. I am happy to be with this elite group of activists. Actually, the conflict in Syria and one of its disadvantages, in addition to the wide range of and severity of violations, that there are multi parties since 14 years ago. The regime is suppressing the people, and the conflicts developed based on this, which started with the with the previous regime, and 14 years ago, and now there is another collective or groups dimension: Kurds with Arabs, Sunni with Alawi, and different regions, different areas, and we should heed this dimension. So you need to you mean that collectively that they actually were suppressions and violations concerning all these groups, and the create conflicts between these groups, which engender the collective conflict. No, no, not with this meaning. Syria is a diverse country, and the previous regime is the reason for the separation between these groups. So when there were violations, the intentional policy of the regime, previous regime, is to manipulate this and to create conflicts between different groups. So it is not only a conflict between the people and the political system, but it took other dimensions in addition to the exacerbation of issues issues and chaos. For there are Kurd parties, Arab parties. They are blaming each other about violations like imprisonment violations and confiscation of lands and others. I am not here telling you who is to be blamed, but I am detailing this issue. So things became more complicated. We are not dealing, for example, with a conflict like the Latin America conflict when Argentina suppressed many political movements, but our cause is much more complicated. And then the question is how to deal with the authority. As Ms. Fadwa mentioned, till now we haven't taken the first steps. We haven't established a national commission to look for the missing ones and to know their destinies and to meet with the families of the missing people as well as the prison and detention centers. There is ambiguity about the documents and access to documents, and there is another dimension that it is impossible to be addressed without putting it in its general framework, which is the reparation, reconciliation, and achieving justice for victims. We need to have two parallel tracks, which is the transitional justice as well as reconciliation in order to go forward towards peace. So the starting point is by establishing or creating a commission. I think the starting point that the authorities should meet with right-based organizations and the families of the missing people, and such programs should be national programs. Till now, they are refusing to do so. Till now, I haven't heard any official rejection. As far as I know, that demands were communicated to this government, and. Uh, uh, in short, to talk about this issue, because the most urgent issue is the missing ones issue. So let us start, and wherever we start, we can open the discussion towards other issues, and then we can develop a national program for the transitional justice, because this is a time-consuming program. It is related to reparation, the accountability, mechanism of accountability, national reconciliation, and it is not an easy issue, but we need to start somewhere. But till now, we haven't started yet. So what you have mentioned, Mu'tasim, opens the floor for many questions. I would like to ask one of them to Rand. Rand talked, Mu'tasim talked about the past years since the beginning of the Syria revolution till now. Do you think that the transitional justice should be retroactive since Hafez al-Assad era till now? I mean, the past 52 years. This is a question for you, Rand. Maybe Rand. I'm back. I'm back. Sorry for this. I don't know if you have heard this question. So, to achieve the transition justice, are we going to start since the Syrian revolution, or go retroactively till or 52 years? There are many questions related to the starting point because many people are going back and returning as if time forgave what has been done, as if the era of Bashar al-Assad is not related to the era of Hafez al-Assad or the previous 12 years. And So we are still waiting for justice. We cannot bypass or skip. And although it is very hard to find the evidence, and what I am seeing in the media to generalize some actions and personalities since Hafez al-Assad period and Bashar al-Assad and the Syrian revolution till now. This uh, media blinding as if Bashar al-Assad was the only one to do so, or this could have been done during the past 14 years. The media is manipulating us in not in a very good way. This is a legal issue. They can actually withdraw actions if they are not perpetrators. Yes, you may ask the those who are working on the human rights issue. I think we need retroactive accountability and because these are not actually will not fall with a prescription. And some scenarios may be imposed on us, we some people may ignore many crimes. I don't know how we are going to measure the rights of individuals. And we are asked to have a new social contract in order to unheed many crimes. And this is a concerning issue. You are a group of media people, and you can cope with this issue, how you cover this issue, because it is very sensitive to cover the issue of transitional justice, because there are witnesses that could be at risk, and there are many sensitivities related to the issue. Sure enough, we have two main issues. There is one related to the media and transitional justice, and how the media is covering the transitional justice. And this has five pillars: the relationship with the documents and documentation, and this is related to what happened today since the fall of the regime hitherto, and what kind of documents that they have the right to access, and others that they don't have the right to access, and the documents they can disclose or have the right to disclose, and not to disclose. And some people offered to sell us some documents. I don't know who they are, but we need to continue on doing these things with the Western media and the other media or the other mass media outlets. And this is related to documentation and also to enhance accountability as a media. I needed to play a role in holding the governing authority accountable in order to ensure the integrity. I need to keep monitoring them in order to be able to ensure this. And also, I need to work on raising awareness. People need to know their rights during this phase, um, and where they can refer to the court, and how they can do it, because this is a long pathway. And also to enhance the role of media in reconciliation, it is very important to open a dialogue, a social dialogue, and this is an important role actually. And the speech of hate, we need to work on the speech of hate. As for what happened in the prisons, and even the interviews with the prisoners that are released from the prison, we are witnessing many atrocities, and there are many influencers that they need to get this buzz without any awareness, or they don't care for this. But actually, there is a unitization of many female and male detainees, and this opened the door for many predictions about the mistreatment of such. detainees and putting them in inhumane conditions. Even if invited this person and he agreed to be interviewed, I think this consent is not an informed consent because so the connection is not very stable run. I would like to move on to Jumana. I'm not doing it in order, but Jumana, I need to ask you that there is a main issue here. We talked about the current authority role and the heeding and they are unheeding the calls and the demands of the missing people's families, and also the you told us about the Minister of Justice and the in the new administration, and talking about the ICG, and that there's a possibility that they are going to sign the Roma treaty, which is related to crimes against humanity and other things. And In your review or your opinion, do you consider this a step forward, or maybe this is media to attract the attention of the media? Are they are they really intending the HTS to start a dialogue and to look for missing people? The visit of Karim Khan from the ICG and the meeting with the Sharia and the other announcements actually that we need to start looking for missing people and to have a study in cooperation with the ICG. I think this is an important step. And Previously, I've been asked by the media about this, and I responded that I cannot expect this, or I wouldn't expect that. I don't know if the intention is real or actual. I don't know the distance between the first step that is taken, because till now we have nothing clear. I don't know where this will be leading us. Is it only a meeting and getting acquainted with each other, or if there will be real steps and actual intention to move forward? Uh, with this track. But the question here, Jumana, that signing the Rome Convention or a treaty, is it binding? To such obligations, sure. The Rome Convention and or treaty is binding for all parties and apply for all crimes committed during this period. There is no immunity for any party if there is something to start. There is actually a jurisdiction for the court. Can they initiate this? And no, if Syria is not a party to the to Rome law, they cannot start or initiate this alone. Or I mean, the court cannot start investigating the issue, and the way for this is to refer it to the Security Council, and there was the Russian veto or the veto of Russia, which was hindering this effort. And I don't think we are going to face it again. So I think if there is investigation, this is a great step and reflects in a true intention to start a new page, because the ICG is the right and most relevant place to prosecute all the perpetrators for the crimes committed, and even on international level, they can deal with the triple IN, the and to hold them accountable about what has been done all through the past years, and the other files and all the evidence collected or the other signed protocols, the triple IN, or what is stipulated by the cooperation protocols of the yeah. So and now we compiled all these things, and we need to benefit from the compiled documents in order to achieve justice. Rand, this is interesting. Do individuals have the right to sue to sue the government or the previous government for for your imprisonment, for example, or to disclose information as any uh, uh, judiciary system that there is a prosecution, a prosecutor general, there is an investigation based on the charges, but this is based on the testimonies of the witnesses and maybe like a joint prosecutors or witnesses, but the individual uh, liability in international courts that he cannot an individual cannot go individually to the court, but it should be through the prosecutor general. But the international jurisdiction is not replacing the internal track. No, no, it doesn't replace it. We need a complementary and which is a principle applied all over the world. Sure enough, we cannot prosecute people for the same crime twice, or no court would investigate or litigate a case which involves another judiciary, be it local or international. Um, this requires full coordination on who are the perpetrators or crimes prosecuted in the ICG. Sure, in the Syrian context, actually, with this long conflict and with the numerous parties and the scale of violations that Mu'tasim talked about. Sure enough, not any international court, even the ICG, would be capable to work on all these crimes. But as what happened in the previous Yugoslavia, to litigate 140 cases or culprits or perpetrators and other contexts, it will be 90 to 100. This is what international courts do, either special courts or the ICG. What about the national judiciary, which has the main jurisdiction? And with this, we may say that it is up to the process, and if there is a will to reform the judiciary or the laws, or to integrate or create laws based on the international laws. If a special court was established in Syria, I think it is not hard, even to have their own. Laws, if you want to expedite the cases and crimes, they can prosecute by setting conditions and the whole system, the whole legal system. In brief, we may say that there are many expertise in the Syrian CSOs and also in international community that can help us. There are
many institutions that were established with the efforts of the families of the victims, like the IIMP and other organizations for the missing people. Many organizations are ready to do so. Most importantly, the will and to design this process as agreed between everybody. And as Mu'tasim said, sure enough, Ferdinand talked about this. Fado talked about this organization for the first time. There is an international UN decision to have an institution to search for the forced missing people. Fadwa, you haven't left Damascus. How do you view such attempts to achieve rights and justice? Because Zina, you were talking about concerns, and we need to expedite launching this track in order to stop the violations and to limit them. True. The regime fell 2.5 months ago, and there are many files that we need to handle through the new administration, and these files are related to the grave destruction and the number of the missing people and the very bad economic situation, and there are big files, and at least during the coming 1.5 months, we need a start towards achieving justice, but at least to enable people and the families of the missing people to feel that there is a starting point, and we are starting with this pathway in order to make us feel that we have sort of justice. And I keep hearing, where are the rights of our children and how we are going to move forward? And this is opening the floor for vengeance and revenge actions. For example, one of the parents of one of the victims said that I need to revenge and get my rights. With my hands. And actually, there was an incident for the Muhtars of Damascus who was involved in surrendering many people, and he was killed in the middle of the road, and they threw his body. And some people feel that these actions is giving them back some of the justice they deserve. And even that in the absence of the support for the TV, people are running from where they are getting the news. We need a national media to tell the stories of the people, to tell them something in order to enable people to feel that they are part of it, and they are not being neglected. Till now, we have been 2.5 months from the fall of the regime, and things, if they get bigger, we may be heading for a very bad scenario that could expand in the vengeance and revenge actions between the families of the victims and some of the involved people by detaining them, torturing them, or and in the small villages and towns, all the people know each other. There is one village near Al Ghouta in Damascus used to have 150 missing people. The returned ones were only six. So people were running about the destiny of their children, or maybe if they know who surrendered their children, they may take their revenge, and they cannot control their tempers, or they are not going to wait for reconciliation after 1 year. We need quick and real steps in order to enable people to feel that this track is starting on a certain date, and if done, this will maintain the civic peace. Fadwa, you told us very enthusiastically about this institution and a UN institution or agency to look for the absentees and the missing people. My question, how the CSOs, and there is a question on the chat, how the CSOs could consolidate the efforts in order to impose the launching of this track and in order to achieve transitional justice and to ensure that these actions are not repeated. So, before dwelling in the response, I would like to comment. Sure enough, Mu'tasim, to respond to Matsam, sure enough, in new government, they are busy with many things. But I think what we are talking about when it comes to the civil peace and achieving justice and other things, they needed to start with the issue of the absentees and detainees and missing people. As Zena mentioned, anyone who lost one of his family members or beloved ones, if they see that there is no justice achieved, they are going to take the revenge with their hands. So Syria will be infested with the individual revenge actions, and things will go out of control. There are priorities, in my view, and if this government wants to control the civil peace and set priorities, they may say, and I may be frank. They are saying they are taking the criminals who committed the crimes. We don't know who they are detaining or arresting. They may be witnesses. They may say important information or give important information. So we may find out that they are arresting witnesses and holding them accountable. There are actions taken against these people. Just imagine reconciliation. I am a very peaceful person, but I think any family in Syria cannot reconcile with the criminal without being held accountable. We need first to know the truth. We need to know where and where are our children and things who did bad actions to these people. They need to be held accountable, and this is a thing that we need to work on. The other thing, how Nada, we have in 3 years' time, we met together as 10 associations working on the missing people, and maybe Motasem knows better about what we have done in order to establish this organization. For the first time, an organization is being created out of the efforts of the families of the missing ones in order to discover the destiny of the missing people and absentees in Syria. And also, there is a decision by the Secretary General. 83 countries voted for establishing this organization. Um, um, and the problem was that we cannot enter to Syria while ruled by Assad, and now the regime has fallen. And um, People have an organization we can defer to in order to get information. Fadwa, you told me that recently you were in a conference in Geneva, and there was a new chairperson for or president for this organization that was appointed. They are going to start going to Syria now. At the beginning of this month, they appointed a president for the organization. And I don't know about the interstate protocols. Are you hopeful and optimistic about the organization that will continue looking for the forced missing people um, so it was established, but it is not funded by the UN. So it is not. Um, um, uh, It does not work according to UN laws. And after what happened in Nada, I trust nothing because we have organizations working for 14 years for preparing for this moment, the collapse of the regime or the fall of the regime. Until now, we haven't seen them. I am so. Yeah. So, what about the civil society? Can they come together in order to impose practical steps towards achieving justice and discovering a truth? They are supposed to consolidate the effort as one block. Because collective work brings better outcomes when compared to individual efforts. We are going to repose the questions, but I would like to ask Mu'tasim. The thing mentioned by Fadwa is very important. Fadwa as a victim and have a husband and a son who are missing. So my question is on whom we need to implement the justice on the person who took the decision or implemented the crimes and where is the role of the amnesty law because there are many experiences in neighboring countries that were implemented. So, what is your opinion? I do second what Fadwa mentioned and the priority of discovering the destiny of disappeared people. And I would like to re-mention this. I think today we have three main priorities. They go in parallel. Uh, So, at the same token, first of all, to keep and reserve the detention centers in order to keep and maintain all the documents because we need to know what happened. We are seeing some initiatives. Some people are raiding prisons, and I don't know who allowed them to do so. And the priority is the missing ones and discovering the destiny of the missing and for disappearing people. Because legal wise, um, the missing people are assumed alive until their destiny is determined, and also to seek the expertise who accumulated many expertise during the past years when it comes to transitional justice. There are questions that are not supposed to be answered by individuals. We need collective answers. What are the priorities? The accountability levels. These are governed by levels and also the penalty levels because it is based on different contexts. The in South Africa, when they moved from the apartheid to democratic system, they did public hearings in order to hold or committed the violations against the black people. And there are other ideas. There was a discussion in Damascus with a large number of young and males and females. And when I talked about this, I said, today I have a missing person. For example, personally, I know the moment of his detention, and I know where he was actually during the following several months. And I know the people who are involved in this, and I know that he was detained by the military security that was at that time led or commanded by so and so, or um, there were people working there, and this needs investigation about what happened. But let us assume that I know the chain of command at that time. What can I do after knowing the chain of command and whom I should hold accountable? All of them should be held accountable. Are they going to be penalized or according to the level of involvement in the crime? And here we can tackle the amnesty during the current circumstances and with the absence of the political stability or the national reconciliation can no one can issue an amnesty regardless of your achievements, and no one and no achievement and no political situation may allow this because there are rights for the families of victims. No one can say that on behalf of you. I've decided to pardon so and so. Maybe the they're insisting that the families of the victims should be part of this dialogue. Yes, true. They should be part of the decision. One of the officials, when asked about the missing people, he said, "I also have a missing brother, and and God will hold them accountable." Meaning that I don't know want to know what happened to him. يعني no, he's giving. I'm not seconding what I'm saying, but I'm telling you what happened. This rationale for him could be acceptable, for others could be not acceptable or unacceptable. How we can reach a decision that someone is making a decision individually, or is there a national mechanism to do so? Can the Syrian model, for example, mention who they should refer to? For example, you talked about Argentina and Tunisia, Morocco. Is there a certain model that we can implement, or is there a Syrian particularity that could be applied? So each experience had its own particularity because it was linked in a way or another with the political event or transition, because authority may be transferred from the father to the son, and and also يعني did or declared an amnesty without holding anyone accountable. And yeah, this is one context, like Morocco. In Syria, their context is different. In South Africa, there is also different context. There was between the apartheid and they ended the apartheid with a political agreement. In Syria, there weren't any political agreement. The Assad regime, for example, didn't say that I declare my responsibility for this problem and I'm moving forward for political agreement. No, didn't do so. We are facing a situation where regime has fallen and collapsed, and now we are having a new authority, and they are saying that their task is to that is to transfer the country from one situation to another, and they are not concerned with the UN resolution 2252. And we may say that the authority individually cannot give answers. We need a national dialogue, and the most important thing in a national dialogue is the transitional justice, which is linked with the civil peace, and also achieving and getting the rights of the victims and their families. Jumana, in 2 words, what is the transitional justice? Is that to create confidence in the new regime, or to do something else? As for me, because I am a legal person and work closely with the survivors and victims, I think it is achieving justice, and after the atrocities they have faced, in order to find the minimum level of satisfaction in order to continue with their life, يعني, nearly normally, after being exposed to torture or sexual violence or detention. To move forward with their normal life, is it founded on accountability? Yes, in the Syrian context, we cannot escape accountability and let it go, because these are crimes um, this is a right for the victims, and we need to maintain their rights, and they are. They are not subject to limitation. You talked about the real intelligence and Al-Mazay prison, as Mr. Khatib mentioned, and they are the worst prisons in Syria. And you mentioned that the case was 160 pages, and that they went back to Hafez al-Assad time, and this is the comprehensiveness of the crimes, and we need comprehensiveness in justice, not only from the beginning of the revolution, but we can go retroactively to the past era. The charges were all crimes against humanity, and they have a diverse scope, methodological and systematic, and done against many Syrians. And it was important for the court to look into the motivations and causes, and they considered all the evidence to ensure that this is a continuity of a policy that started decades ago. um, and they examined all the evidences, and um, the testimonies, actually, of the witness, and the massacre of Hama in Tadmur, and they investigated and examined how the decision was taken, and the continuous torture, as and also the forced disappearance as a tool um, to shut the voices of the community. And you are mentioning the victims and the survivors. with countries that are state party to the Rome uh, Treaty, and these are signatories to the treaty. Um, so the place of residence has nothing to do with accepting the action and the OTP didn't accept it the action, and the other country should be cooperative and accept the cooperation. We are talking about the same country, which is Jordan. If we are talking about the country, which is Jordan, you talked about reparation. And even Mu'tasim talked about it, which is related to the housing, to the place, and the displacement. So we need to reparation should start. Are we going to wait for this mechanism? Sure enough, with the CSOs and the different organization, they need to start rendering services. If we don't start with this national program on transition justice, we need to start providing the services for all the families of the victims, for the disappeared people, and to provide social and psychosocial services and support. Motsam talked about compensation for displacement. True, but I needed to mention that the same CSOs when used to work as right-based organization before the fall of the regime, and we started thinking about this project and working on it years ago. 2 years, I mean, with the support of the Atlantic Council, is how to build and to create a fund for the Syrian victims at that time. How we thought about that anything related to the crimes in Syria, or financial sanctions, or violations of the sanctions, anything related to the funds in Syria should are the right of the victims, and we need to establish a fund, and with the aim to provide support for the victims. We are mentioning support because we didn't say reparation, because reparation is the responsibility of the state, and after a political transition. And with this fund, and with the proposed ideas that we need to consider more in order to find the sources to support this fund, and by involving the families and the other stakeholders and the victims themselves. This is a very important thing at all stages, and by considering and thinking about all these steps through the working groups and that we created. So this fund could start, because you mentioned the penalties or sanctions. Yes, by transferring all the funds confiscated by the sanctions, in order to feed this fund to provide the compensation for the families. We cannot answer all these questions in the current situation, but many efforts exerted, even in last March, there was a decision taken by the European Parliament to establish a fund to support the Syrian victims, and this was an outcome for the advocacy that we conducted towards this issue. We are continuing our efforts. There's ongoing efforts, And I do hope to have a very big fund and to be funded by different countries intending to support Syria for reparation and compensations. Because when talking about crimes perpetrated in Syria, we are talking about all sorts of crimes, including the forced disappearance that Mu'tasim talked about. There are many crimes perpetrated, and we need an international will to provide for this fund and to dedicate it for the reparation of the Syrians, which I think will play a role. Zainam, um, um, Khulud Al-Amari from Iraq is asking,
We wish that Syria's experience is not like Iraq's after the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, but the concerns that the peace will be under threat again. And yes, these are actually legitimate threats and concerns. But what we are seeing is reassuring is that after 1 month and a half, yes, we see all these disturbances, but we can't see it. We don't see it every second or every day or everywhere. And we saw that there is a status of tired or people are tired of violence of war, and there are people are actually just seriously just want to stop the war and stop the bloodshed that we saw over the 14 years. Now, uh, this I believe I don't think that this I don't think that it's very it's easy. It's very difficult to find out actually after a few days or after a very small time. We are still actually relying on people. There is a high relying on people to have a high level of self restraint, and we are still want to see, and we hope that the situation will only get better with the future. But all this situation actually and all these rights are not only for the missing people or the detainees, and there is a lot of injustice that was actually accumulating and aggregating over decades, and the problems of people. And when I was talking to someone in Damascus who actually lost his home, but he didn't find a place to return to, I asked him, "What is justice for you?" And I thought that he would answer that he wants to get his home, and he said, "No, the lands that Al Assad regime took back in the 70s to return these lands that he took actually 40 or 50 years ago." So yes, there were a lot of disputes actually or underlying issues in Syria. So yes, the regime has fallen, and we want to open the old files and start with them file by file. And who has a right will take it. And how can we know, or how can we actually react? So yes, these things that can threat the peace or domestic peace, but we don't want to start a new bloodshed. But again, we are relying on a very clear agenda on the national level. But yes, in Lebanon after the war, forgive but not forget. So is it required to actually delete our memory in order to go forward? Sure, this is really true. Actually, we are hearing speeches that there was nothing happened over the 14 years or even the decades before. No, this is something completely rejected. For those who's going to forgive, this is something personal in order to be able to go forward. But for sure, actually, the absence of justice or absence of reconciliation, all of these are rejected actually, and you cannot build something for the future. So it's just like trying to throw some dirt on it, and you cannot forget decades of injustice that, and we do have huge injustices actually, and we hear a lot of calls that some of the jails would turn into museums, and what do you think about this? Actually, yes, maybe some of the prisons can be turned into museums, and even some of the statues that were actually taken down of President Assad can put them there. So some of these can stay because it is a witness on a certain era. So. Yes, this is not easy, and yes, we have been through horrible acts. And yes, we need to have some sort of memoir, and regardless of its harshness. And yes, we have examples from around the world still talking about horrible events and things that were committed, or crimes that were committed, actually, and talking about the archiving of the events that took place. And I believe this requires a collective decision. I don't know how many decisions we can do with people, and we don't know what can we do and how can we transform that into a certain memorial that talks or that tells the story without forgetting. And we need to focus on never again, and that this thing will never happen again. And all this torture, and all these horrible things that happened to our fathers and grandfathers actually should not happen again, and or must not happen again, because all this torture and all the security doctrine that started this torture and detention and arrest and the threat underarm should not come back. And I just to have a small intervention. Rand, I thought you disappeared. No, I am here with you. I was listening. No, the idea with the remembering or memorial, I don't want to have it, or we need to have it not as a random one. We don't want it just to promote the triumph party. Never again, actually, never again experience we witnessed in Germany, and it wasn't that successful. Actually, and there was a lot of pressure from the allies to deep root or to grow root something actually that is not actually a part of the is not actually part of the part of the work actually, or part of the sector of doctrines, and also the people in Syria. So the memorial culture is not actually is not a culture that need to have it more random. Actually, we don't want to create counter violence, and then we start a circle of violence that never ends. And this is why we need to have a calculated culture of remembrance or memorial, because we can say that in Syria or in Syrian history, we have witnessed massacres. I come from a family that were actually victims of the massacre against the Assyrians, and nobody is talking about the Assyrians. And we start actually with this memory, and we actually pass down this memory, and we still debate who are we going to blame and who killed who, and we still have certain concern because that other actually have killed us and nobody said anything. So this is something that we need to put in front of us when we talk about the when we want to talk about this, because the verbal or the verbal history should be documented. Yes, this is our role. This is your role in media. Yes, it is our role in media, and yes, it's our role in arts and also civil society. And we need to start disconnect actually with, or this link with media. We still have a gap actually between what we are mentioning, those who are actually involved in revolution, and those who and what the other is mentioning, and the perspectives and how we see the different events. And if we want to talk from a media perspective, we need to find the space where we can find, or where we can see the full picture or the whole scene, because I cannot actually ignore the perspective of one of the groups of what happened, and to consider, since I have actually won and I have achieved my goal, which is bringing down this regime, that this is the only that matters. No, there is a comment from Zaina Bitar, and I don't know if she's the same Zaina Bitar I know. She says, Zaina says, that memory is one of the most important things that we need to keep in order not to repeat this history again. Yes, this memory, Hama needs this memory in order to recover, and how this memory was kept. And once the regime fallen, people started taking condolences of their victims and of their parents who fallen. And I believe that this memory is some sort of repatriation and reparation. And Martin talked about a number of basics, and actually to prevent what happened, to prevent hatred speech and hate speech, and how your media is linked to that. That we shouldn't actually hold that the winners culture, and to only without anything else, and how you are dealing with the survivors and dealing with the issues. What is your role as media to bring this or bridge the gap? We do have very important role, and this require opening a new doors for the authority. We need to have independent media institutions that are able to express themselves, and also we need to have an environment or a climate that allows us to criticize. And we don't want to have only the culture of the winner, and we find ourselves in facing a hate speech that put its finger on the wound, and that we need, or that we have, is something that we need to fix it. And I believe that this is very basic actually to address that, because the Syrian people have worked a lot over the past 14 years. We should not neglect or forget that effort, and we need to create this partnership to benefit from the civil society organization, and also what efforts they have exerted to start a campaign and to train journalists. And because as we have previously spoke over the phone, actually we don't have a specialization in terms of legal journalism or activist journalism. So journalism is actually going into very general wars, and maybe we are also victims. We are all victims as journalists. We are not neutral. We are part of the tale, and therefore our perspective is very important. So it's very necessary to cooperate in order to win these battles, and in order to think of them, and also to actually shed the light and to highlight what happened, because the things that we have provided over the years won't be erased by the authority, and they say that we want to start from scratch. So this is why we are doing that role, and we are playing the mediator role in the community, meaning today we want to be aware that the people who were living under the regime or Al-Assad's controlled regions won't be heard. And I'm not talking about people who were actually complicit with the regime. No, we're talking about people, normal people, actually, and I'm losing their participation and their contribution in an actual domestic peace. Therefore, this should be actually a participatory approach, whether for the media, with the civil society, and also we ask the current authority to open its doors, because we do have some issues with the Ministry of Information, and this is another issue that we don't want to talk about it. That we don't have a Ministry of Information, but this authority or government, a new government, should actually facilitate the work of journalists and guarantee and protect them and guarantee their rights. Fadwa, you have said that you don't want to talk too much, but I will ask you your comment, or to comment on forgiveness and remembrance. And I believe that this is something that actually touches every Syrian who have been through experience, whether prison or torture or missing people, or those who are forcefully arrested or detained, and your husband was abducted, and your son as well. And you have said, I read an interview with a newspaper, that I want a grave to my son in order to visit And I hope that you will find your son well alive and you won't repeat that sentence again. But as for your memory, how do you deal with that memory? Because you have actually commented on Mu'tasim that yes, accountability is a must. No, I commented on Mu'tasim that he actually stated that uh, his brother who passed away, he doesn't want to actually seek accountability from those who committed that crime. I wanted to know the truth, whether no matter what it is actually, whether it was negative or positive actually, and I would accept it as is, and I would deal with it with full sufficiency actually. But memory for me, Uh, look, dear, since the days of the detention I've been through, I have been detained during the time of Hafiz al-Assad until this day. These psychological scars that remained with me, once the door is closed, I feel that there is something actually uh, uh, um, uh, something is actually tightening my breath or make me breathe harder. So after all these years, if I wasn't able to reconciliate or how can I say it? No, yes, reconciliate with that issue. I wouldn't have forgiven my brother who actually detained me or who arrested me. I cannot in 1 second to remember this torture I have lived and I have been through because he was a head of a security branch and he arrested me and put me in prison. This is a memory I cannot forget. But it's not a revenge or a memory for revenge. No, at all. But this memory should remain and to actually uh, enshrine it and to keep it. And it is a reminder that these things are very important in our lives and should not be forgotten. And when as we talk about Hama, maybe the generation of the young girls, I don't believe that they would know anything without the documentation by their fathers and grandfathers. They wouldn't know anything about the massacres in Hama. A lot of things that happened in Syria, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 generations don't know anything about because they were not actually kept in the memory. So I see that what happened or what happened since 2011 and let alone Hafiz al-Assad's time, because this is far memory, but it's very necessary, not for the sake of revenge or for anything, but just to make sure that this will never happen and that these things won't happen again in Syria. And I believe that this is really important and necessary. Thank you, Dr. Fadwa. If you have anything else, we will come back to you. But Mu'tasam, I believe you haven't taken the idea or the notion behind a violation of deportation and displacement. I believe we are at the end of our discussion, but you can tell us briefly because we know that half of Syria population were displaced. And why do you think that this is an integral or a basic part of transitional justice? Yes, I want to comment on the memory thing first. Yes, of course. I believe that we have to have some mechanisms in order to ensure that these violations are not repeated again. Or one of it is actually reform. I believe what happened in Syria, the main mishap or the main glitch in that is that they have actually waived the responsibility or the first and foremost responsibility, which is safekeeping or keeping security as a result of the role of the authority. They have actually did these or caused these violations and the violence and counter violence by default. So how can we do reform in the state and reform these laws regulating the work of the state and to guarantee that the new government will not commit new violations or other violations because they are thinking that they are threatened by a certain risk. And I believe there is one other important thing. How can we handle or deal with the memory? Now, nobody can actually trick themselves, or trick one can trick himself or herself that a massacre like Hama will happen again, and that stopping talking about that in newspaper or in media, that this memory will be forgotten, because fact proven that this will not happen. But how can we deal with our memory today collectively, that there is something wrong that happened on the level of the state and community that led to such violations, and we as state and community should not repeat this, or to deal with that as that there is a group committed violations against another group, so the grandchildren of those victims of those perpetrators will actually bear the responsibility of what they have done in the other group grandchildren, and starting a vicious circle of violence, and this is not acceptable as well. Yes, we need to have accountability, but the way of reading history, how we read history, that groups are actually passing down grudges or even mistakes and sins. And this is not right. This will lead to a a vicious circle of violations and counter violations, like the Sunnis and the Shiites. So, what do I have to do with what Yazid bin Muawiyah did 1,300 years ago? This is illogical. And moving to the uh, ownership and houses and households. We do have a problem in Syria, which is the irregular housing and slum dogs. 50% of the Syrian houses are illegal houses. And we are not talking about simple percentage. This is not only violation of the of the regulations. No, this is what we call the a violation of the decent household, meaning to have infrastructure, schools, and amenities, and to achieve a livelihood for those living in those regions that are decent and good. The displacement caused by the armed conflict and the armed dispute. So there were circumstances forced people to leave their houses and to leave either across the border to other countries or to other regions in the same country. And what happened to their properties, which has already issues in proving their title or their titleship or entitlement to those houses in the first place. Actually, they were destroyed and looted. Actually, all the property contents were looted and by the gunmen, and they were sold. And in other agricultural lands that were actually taken over and were actually invested. So people who were displaced for 10 or 12 years, what are the circumstances that they lived in? They have lost their lives, they have lost their livelihoods. A lot of people actually, their livelihood was tied to their houses. Their children went out of schools. There were no healthcare. They were actually exposed to a number of violations. You can find a lot of the families whose members were actually victims of bombing or other many numerous violations. So this issue is a very complicated issue in Syria, and we talk about this vast volume of violations. We are talking about hundreds of thousands who are displaced. We are talking about tens of thousands of damaged properties. We are talking about a destroyed economic actually, and today the country actually is unable to pay or to secure the salaries for the public servants. But don't you think that this fall under the transitional justice? Yes, this falls under repatriation, and also admitting that right, and to deal with actually the losses during war, and to repatriate or compensate them for their homes and for the years of displacement, like the fund that Jomana mentioned. Yes, there was a lot of discussion and controversy, maybe which victims are entitled to receive compensation from that fund, and I believe that this is more tied to the reconstruction. Reconstruction also have a dimension in transitional justice that is not economic per se, because there is a huge cost to that. And I believe that a specific fund should be established for the displaced people. But what Zaina have mentioned in terms of actually expropriating homes and properties during Al Assad's regime by those who actually were by those who were loyal to that regime. Do you find people who actually regained their properties? Yes, many actually have did that. Who actually whose homes were taken by officers in Al Assad regime, including Mr. Riyad Saif. His house was actually taken by the government and it was returned. So these cases are redundant. We need to introduce that your father was a political prisoner for long years, and he was a leader as well and a big politician. And therefore, yes, we are talking about many violations. This violation, which is the taking over or expropriation of properties, many people will go back to their homes, and those who actually took over the hand without took over those properties would have left already, because they are afraid of the consequences given the current political situation. I believe you anyway took actually we can talk for many things, and your actually comments open many comments, and we have reached the end, but I want to go back to see if you have any final comments, and we start by with you, Jumana. In brief, after all what have been said, I believe that transitional justice is essential, and to strengthen the peace, the fragile peace. And without justice, without accountability, without a national program that is clear, and without transparency, I'm afraid that there will be no sustainable peace whatsoever. And Rand, as you know, I have seen you actually, but I haven't seen you actually for quite some time now. Uh, and whatever is concerning transitional justice, I believe transitional justice won't be realized without the engagement of women from beginning to end. And I would like to salute Jumana for all the efforts that she has exerted. She has exerted in all sexual violence cases in the detention camps or in these prisons. And we hope to see an actual track of justice in Syria. Fedwa, if you'd like to address a final word, but I would like to say that there is a comment that came from a person whose name is Ibrahim. You are the best example of a Syrian free fighter, and your story must be actually something of a lesson. Yes, justice, transitional justice is one of the demands, but I would like to deliver a message through this event. We need to reveal the destiny of those missing, and those forcefully missing and forced missing. And we hope that all these mothers we see won't go down to street and or take to the street, and we need to have attention paid to that file, and this is part of justice. And if that thing won't realized, I believe justice won't be complete. And this is from my point of view as a mother and as a person who sees justice. Zaina, if you want to say anything. Unfortunately, it's very intertwined and very complicated, but we are at the starting point. We are we are at the starting point, and yes, the we have been fighting for 10 years, but we could have started in these 10 years. And it's very important to actually talk about all these files, and we cannot actually just saying that we are going to do so and so and so and forget so and so and so. No, we don't want to resemble Iraq or Egypt, or maybe some people are actually talking about a model, looking for a model of other countries. No, we need to have a model of our own. Actually, I would like to give you an example from Ruknuddin, a suburb in Damascus. In Damascus, actually, people actually have erected or have put a memorial for those who died under torture, and they have opened a uh, they started taking condolences for the martyrs, and people started paying condolences. And now they have started, or they have built a memorial, or they have built a shrine. Yes, there are no bodies or no graves that they would actually visit, but at least 145 people actually know out of 1,000 actually, and this is a beginning. And yes, the small steps actually would make people feel that justice is underway. And yes, it needs years, but these small steps may make feel people feel very comfortable. Matasan, we started with a woman, and now we close with a man, and share with us the justice and equality. If you have a final word, it's very best to open with a woman and close with a woman as well. So, so I will be talking after you. And if the current government, if we want to give her that government the credit that they have led the final effort to bring down the Assad regime, and this is correct. But in terms of transitional justice, this achievement is not enough uh, to a certain, or for a certain party to actually take the decision and to say that I have accomplished that, and you have to go as I or you have to do as I wish. No, not because we have a contrast in opinions or in ideologies. No, because this actually will not go, and this will not happen actually, and we need to have national effort. And here I would like to second on what Zain said. The national effort is a beginning. It's very impossible to start from a small step to solve all these issues. But if we don't have an effort actually that starts with partnership between the government, the current government, and the community, to talk, and we are talking about the ties of the missing people families, and also the expert houses, and the civil rights. How can we start with this transitional justice actually, and the process, and this process does or will take time. So. But without starting it, I don't believe that we will succeed. I have full faith in the Syrian people, and after 1 month and a half, I am more almost sure that we had concerns that we will see violence much more greater than we see. I have than we see now. The first day I went to Damascus after the overthrow of the regime, we had people celebrating in in the Umayyad square, and people actually were very joyous. It's very impossible that we have this security situation may depend on police, army, or any group to actually regulate it. No, they were only self-regulated. We need to trust this community, and we need to have this community as partner in this issue. And by that, we can start and take the first step. It's not 100% optimal. There is nothing optimal. No country has actually completed an experiment successfully 100%. So we need to take some efforts, and this requires partnership between the government and the community. Unfortunately, this is really exciting and does do need a lot of discussion. And I want to have a final indication or to read something from a colleague in Jordan that she says. Uh, I believe this is commenting on what Zaina said, that there is no media in Syria that covers what is happening and what's going on in Syria, actually, and whether there are platforms outside of Syria are willing to spread or to actually cooperate in terms of broadcasting from Syria and talking about spreading the speech of love and staying away from any hate speech. And I hope that you have read all the comments, and we have questions that we have already discussed in this session. But in conclusion, and I would like to thank you all for your participation in this discussion. You, Zaina, Mu'tasim, Jumana, and Rand, and Fadwa, for this participation, and for those who have joined us over Zoom. And we'll see you again in other discussions, and we continue this transitional justice issue, and wish you all the best of luck. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.